John Turner. I'm the Democratic Services Officer for this meeting, and I'm assisted by my colleague Kate Sheldon, who's the host of the meeting. Just a couple of issues, mainly for the purposes of the public. If the members want to speak, just simply raise your hand, and the chair will ask you to speak. By my colleague Kate Sheldon, who's the host of the meeting. Just a couple of issues, mainly for the purposes of the public. All right. Yeah, sorry about that, slight hiccup. Just another thing for members of the public as well. You might see the members looking to the left and right of their screens. They're not being distracted in any way. They're simply looking at paperwork on other devices. Can members keep themselves on mute, please, when they're not speaking, and unmute when they want to speak? One final thing from me, item number eight, sorry, on the agenda has been withdrawn from consideration at today's meeting. I'll now hand you over to the chair of the meeting, Councillor Karen McGowan.
Hi, thank you, John. Welcome, everyone. So I'm going to go around and ask people to introduce themselves, and I'll just go around my screen. So I'll do councillor members first. So Sinead, you're on mute, Sinead.
Famous words. Councillor Sinead Meyer, Richards Manor Ward.
Thank you. Joe?
Councillor Joe Otton, Dawn Totley.
Andy?
Councillor Andy Bainbridge, co-chair of the committee.
Thank you. Mick?
Councillor Mick Rooney, councillor for Woodhouse Ward.
Cliff?
Councillor Cliff Woodcraft, councillor for Fulwood Ward.
Josie?
Councillor Josie Bashik, Hillsborough Ward.
Bob?
Good afternoon. Councillor Bob Pullen, Beechif Greenhill Ward.
Vicky?
Good afternoon. Councillor Vicky Priestley, Stannington Ward.
Ruth?
Hello, Councillor Ruth Mercer, City Ward.
Douglas?
Councillor Douglas Johnson, City Ward.
Thank you. Adam? You're on mute, Adam.
Councillor Adam Hurst, West Ecclesfield Ward.
Thank you. Mary Claire?
Mary Claire Frankie, solicitor to the subcommittee.
Thank you. Claire?
Claire Bauer from the Licensing Service.
Shimla?
Shimla Finch from the Licensing Service.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. The only apologies I've got are Councillor Dawn Dale. I don't know that at the moment. I don't think we've got any exclusions of public and press.
No, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone got any declarations of interest that they need to declare? No? So no declarations of interest. So we'll move on to item 5, which is the minutes of previous meetings. So the first one, I'm going to ask if, I'm presuming everyone's read them. If you've got any issues, I'll take them by the day. If anyone's got any issues, if you can raise your hand. So the 27th of July, is everyone happy that they're accurate and correct? Thank you. The 6th of August, 6th of July, that's the licensing subcommittee, 6th of July. 7th of July. 20th of July. 3rd of August. 17th of August, 18th of August, 1st and 7th of September. Everyone's happy with the minutes and that they're all correct. Thank you, everybody. So now we're going to move on to the Gambling Act 2005 and Sheffield Joint Test Purchasing Strategy. So this is over to you, Shimla, for you to fill us in on the report.
Thank you. This report has been rescheduled. It was due to be heard in March, so it's been rescheduled to today. In brief, the report is to inform you of a new joint multi-agency test purchasing strategy for gambling premises in Sheffield. A full copy of the strategy document is attached at Appendix A of the report. The implementation of the strategy was derived from test purchasing carried out by the Gambling Commission and other local authorities across England, where they tested compliance of adult gaming machines in pubs There's a link on paragraph 2.1 of the report, which details their full findings, and there was an 89% failure rate. This is a high rate and was a concern for the Gambling Commission and other local authorities nationally. So in response to the findings, which shows that there is a risk of under 18s gambling illegally in pubs, a multi-agency task group was formed as detailed in paragraph 2.2 of this report, and a test purchasing strategy was developed. This strategy is to ensure that we address any issues that may arise through test purchasing and for it to act as a training device, and to raise awareness across the industry and for us to work with the trade to get their practices correct. It will cover all gambling premises, so it's not just pubs, it's premises as well, so casinos, betting shops, adult gaming machines, adult gaming premises. And it will provide a clear framework on how we would deal with premises that persistently fail test purchasing. The test purchase itself will be carried out by South Yorkshire Police and Sheffield Trading Standards by using police cadets and volunteers. It's a three-step process. So the first failure, we would advise the licence holders and we will assist and provide measures in tackling underage gambling for that particular premises. A safeguarding and gambling awareness session will also be offered by Sheffield Safeguarding Children's Board. On the second failure, we would look into implementing a multi-agency action plan. And at that point, it would be a requirement at that stage to attend the safeguarding and awareness session, as before it would just be an offer to. At the third failure, which would be in a 12-month period, we would look at implementing review proceedings before the licensing subcommittee, where permits could be cancelled or conditions could be imposed on licenses. Full list of options is detailed on the strategy document itself and what we can do. As part of this, we informed the trades and premises that hold licenses with us that we would be going out and doing compliance assessments, so whether it be inspections or whether it be test purchasing in premises, so they are aware of what we're planning to do. So it'll assist them to review their current policies and procedures. A copy of the letter that we sent is attached to Appendix B of the report. There's no financial implications arising for this, from this report, and we recommend that members note this strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. So has anyone got any questions? Yes, Douglas.
Thanks, Gemma. That's very handy and concise. I just wanted to ask what we know of the sort of current breaches in Sheffield. So obviously, nationwide, it's obviously a very widely breached set of laws there. Do you know about what the position is in Sheffield? Do we have a system that's consistent with that, or is it worse or not as bad?
Is this with test purchasing itself?
Yes, yes. I'm assuming I mean test purchasing. So
this is underage people going in. Yeah, we don't currently have numbers at the moment. So because we've got these findings from the Gambling Commission and the numbers were high, we've implemented this multi-agency task group. So this test purchasing should have been implemented now, but because of the lockdown and the premises being closed, we haven't been able to do anything further. So we'll get a good idea as soon as this is implemented.
Thanks, that's helpful. And I mean, does that mean that we haven't done test purchasing previous to this? This is a new initiative, is it? No. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mick? Yeah, got you.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, we've sent people in ourselves and some very, very high failure figures. Do we try to identify what are basically children, if they're under 18, I suppose, who are in those premises, potentially gambling money that they don't have, if you know what I mean? Do we try to identify people who children that might be at risk of getting involved in, you know, excessive gambling and theft and all that sort of thing to fund that? And the second, I think you said that there's a process whereby the reaction to the failures increases in severity. I mean, personally, I would like to say 3 strikes and out, and I'm just wondering what you think about that as an idea. Thank you.
Thank you. The test purchasing strategy itself is a 3-step process. So you have a first failure, second failure, and then the third failure, it would come to licensing subcommittee where a decision would be made. So we can cancel permits, we can remove licenses, or we can add conditions, etc. So it still is a 3-step process. So we want to try and advise as much as possible and help them to bring their policies and procedures up to the right level where that isn't happening. In regards to children entering the premises, this is what this is part of, is to see what kind of policies and procedures that they do have in place currently, and whether they need to have higher standards. Are they being challenged when they come in? Because you do have premises where children are allowed in the premises. The restrictions are on the type of gambling machines that there are in the premises. So if there are 18+ machines, then they need to be challenged at certain points. So it's making sure that they've got policies and processes in at the right sections, and staff have training, etc. So that's all part of it. Have I answered the question? Sorry.
You've answered the question. I'm a bit sort of I don't know, you might call me hard-hearted on things like this. I just think that if they get caught 3 times, they should automatically lose it. And I've got a thing about, you know, drink driving. I think you get caught once and then you should never drive again. But I'm a bit draconian on these things. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Everyone will be treated under its own merit. So if it's at the 3rd fail, it would be we would bring it to committee with all the evidence, etc. So it would be a member decision on what happens next.
Andy?
Thank you, Chair. Mine's more in the way of a comment. I attended a meeting, I think you might have done as well, Karen. I don't think it was a licensing meeting where this was discussed, and we were not happy about the fact that originally they could choose whether or not to attend a safeguarding and gambling awareness session. So I just want to say thank you that you've listened at 5.2, that it's now a requirement. I'm really pleased about that, because it seemed pointless before that they could attend, but they didn't have to do. It really must be, as Mick said, you've got those 3 strikes. It has to come from us, Mick. It can't be just cancelled by the licensing department. We as the committee have got to make that decision. But I'm really pleased that at the 2nd stage they've got to attend that. So I just wanted to say thank you for that, Shimla.
Thank you, thank you. Could I just go back to one point Councillor Johnson had picked up, so about the test purchasing. Just to clarify, the test purchasing is the new strategy. It's something that we're implementing new, but we do go out and inspect premises. So we are still actively engaging with premises and checking the policies and procedures which they currently have in place, and advise with them. So we've been out with the Gambling Commission and officers from our service as well.
Can I just come in and just ask something? It's about the 3-step rule as well. And I noticed it says if a 3rd test purchase failure occurs within 12 months, what happens if it occurs 18 months or where, you know, I don't know why the 12 months is in there. It should be at any point if they've already broken it twice, when that 3rd one triggers. Do they start a clean slate after 12 months and we start at step 1 again? Or
yeah, we've tried to keep it in line with other test purchasing strategies and other enforcement protocols where it's all within a 12-month period. So we've tried to keep it consistent with other enforcement policies that we've got.
But what happens? So does it just after 12 months, do they start again from a clean slate? The 3 strikes start again?
Yeah, it would go back, but it depends on the severity of it as well, I would assume. If it's something that that we need to look at, we will try and assist as much as possible. But if it's persistent and it's the severity of it is quite high, then we would look at other measures. But this is just a general kind of guideline of what process we would take. So everyone could be different, but this is the process that we would generally follow.
I don't know how other members feel about that, and is everybody happy with what they've just heard Joe say?
Could we not have a rolling 12-month period? So something might drop off after 12 months, but the other two remain on. Is that not possible within this?
Or remove the 12 months altogether? But Sinead, did you want to speak?
I was just going to say something similar, because in effect you could do something once or maybe twice a year, but not the third, and then sort of 2 strikes and you're back almost, rather than 3 strikes and you're out. So I think there must be some way of revising that, such that, you know, it's a bit like getting the points on your driving license, isn't it? It ought to add up and not just get taken away spuriously.
Okay, could we have something, I mean, I would have to speak to the other agencies about this, but could we have something in there where we have a 12-month period, but we also kind of review what's happened in the past so many months or years, so it's not missed, but we can still take that into account of any future action that we take. So it's not missed.
But what you're saying is, if after 12 months they go back to the step 1 again, they've got to fail it twice before they come back to us again. So they could have failed it 4 times before we get that information that they failed it 4 times, before it comes to committee for us to see it, because it only comes to us on the 3rd strike.
Okay, so when we come to committee, we can say, right, we're at a 3rd failure within 12 months, but we could give you a history of what's happened with that premises, so you have an idea of how much they have failed.
No, I think it's the 12-month coming to us in 12 months. What happens if it's 18 months? So if we get to an 18-month period, they've failed twice in the 12 months, but then the 3rd strike is in 18 months. They're not going to come to committee. From what I can understand from this, and tell me if I'm wrong, they'll go back to strike 1 again.
Can I come in? I think I've got the answer to that, Karen. I mean, I think actually we're all on the same page. I think what Shim was describing is something where if there are 3 failures within 12 months, so in effect it is, as Sinead says, a rolling 12-month period. So if it comes to committee, if we've got premises that have failed 3 times in the last 12 months, that's when the subcommittee will be looking at taking the licence off or removing conditions. If there's, say, only 2 failures or only 1 failure in that 12 months, even if there's 1 more previously, then, you know, you're looking at offences that are too old, if you like. But I think it would be problematic for us as a subcommittee to be looking at things where there simply haven't been those failures in the last 12 months. And the other side of that is, I mean, I agree with Councillor Rooney in saying that if there have been 3 failures in 12 months, then we should be taking a fairly firm line on that. And I guess we'll have to see how that goes. But if there simply aren't the number of failures within 12 months, then it's probably in that case wrong to be penalising businesses, you know, or simply asking, why they're not being brought to committee fairly soon. I'd expect licensing officers, where they know that there are failures, to be, organising at least 3 visits within the 12-month period. If they're not doing their job. But it sounds like they have got a plan to do their jobs.
Joe, did you want to come in? Yeah.
Yes, thanks. I mean, I kind of share the concerns that this is potentially allowing a large background level of non-compliance without ever triggering three detections in 12 months. I think the problem here is that we don't have. I certainly don't have a good sense of quite how much, how often we're likely to catch people who aren't complying, and therefore how and what the gravity and so on is, and therefore what a sensible threshold for referral is. I think the mood of the meeting is that we want a lower referral threshold, because we want these cases to come before us so we can make judgments. And I would support something saying let's refer a few more than this threshold implies, but the exact wording of it, I think, is difficult for us to get a grip on. I think I'd be happy to take advice from officers on that.
Okay. I think it might be also, yes, Adam, do you want to come in? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really more of a general comment, but I think I'm quite with mixed sort of sentiments on this. I mean, we are looking at gambling here, and I just think you want a low threshold. I can understand, for example, in a busy pub in Sheffield, it's not always an inexperienced staff might not quite get it and challenge people on age, and they can make mistakes. But I think on gambling, which is big money, and as Mick's saying, you're probably talking about taking money off people whose money it isn't. Then I think you go for as strict criteria as you can. It would worry me that somebody might think, oh my God, I've got 2 in the last 12 months. If I keep my nose clean for 18, I'm fine. I would actually perhaps want much more significant sanctions on 1, 2, and 3, so that, well, you know, they've really got to know that it's more inconvenient for them to break, you know, the inconvenience of breaking the law will far outweigh any advantages, and you have to be much more robust in following your obligations, because we're talking about very vulnerable people, and we're talking about an effect on poverty and spending and family income that could be quite severe. I mean, we have suicides led to from gambling. Might have rambled on a bit, but I think you get my sentiment.
Okay.
I think the stricter the better.
Okay, thank you. Bob, did you want to come in?
Yes, I appreciate it, Karen. I just wanted to make 2 comments. The one is that in principle and from extensive outside experience, I totally support the principle that Mick put forward of 3 smacks and down. I think the system, which is operated by magistrates' courts in the instances of driving licenses, is perhaps as good as we can possibly get. It is reliable. That is, that it's 3 offences within a given time period. But in our case, for licensing, if we operate that same system, when an offence, whether it be more than 1 in 1 year or whether it be cumulative over a number of years, when a single offence drops off the period for referral back to us as a committee, we still have that information on the applicant's record. We can always use the information supplementarily that they're not a fit and proper person because of their previous track record. A short, quick one for Shimla, and that is, what processes do we use for checking the compliance with the casinos and the licensed gambling premises? I asked this from an interesting experience I had at a personal level a few years ago when a 14-year-old was found to be a regular patron of a well-known large city gambling establishment. And when I took the initiative to intervene personally and approached the premises and had a word with the manager was simply amazed to find that what he regarded as one of his best, most regular, reliable customers was only aged 14 at the time. He went to check his records and he had used a driving license without a photograph in the days when there were paper licenses to check the age of the applicant. And the applicant wasn't using his own driving license at 14. He couldn't possibly have been doing so. So my question is, how do we check compliance? I know that for licensed sale of alcohol, we send in underage people. We give them due briefing, training, cover them securely with police and council officers, and people underage intentionally go in and make a purchase which gives us the evidence we require. What do we do with the gambling premises?
For the gambling premises, this is what that test purchasing strategy would be for. So this is like a mirror of the alcohol one, but it would be for gambling premises. So currently, what we do for gambling premises is that we go and inspect. So we've been out with the Gambling Commission and we check their policies and procedures to make sure that they have got the right things in place to make sure that there isn't any underage. The test purchasing strategy itself will test that and see whether it is working.
Thank you for that. I'm particularly interested on how we train and how we send in people who are underage into gambling premises, because, of course, any experience in the gambling establishments is the first step to addiction. So I think there's a clarion call here for particular care in how we use underage people to check out the compliance in the gambling casinos. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That's all risk assessed with the police and trading standards, police cadets, before they go in.
Thank you. So I've got Andy, I've got then Cliff, and I've got Ruth.
Thank you. I just wondered, Shimla, I share many of my colleagues' concerns about it could be just after a year. Could extra wording be added to paragraph 3 to say that should it be after 12 months, that the licensing department will consider the seriousness of it, and it may still go to the licensing committee? I think we'd all just like something in there that makes it plain that they don't just go back to strike one again, because they could do this for years and years, to have 2 offences and not make the 3rd, and it just could go on. So if some extra wording could be put in to make it plain, might be over the year, but you could still go before the committee, I think that might be helpful to us. Thank you.
Cheers, Andy, that's really helpful. Cliff?
Thank you. Yeah, can I ask about the frequency of the test purchases? Would I be correct insofar that if someone failed a test purchase on the first occasion, you would then be more likely to visit them on a second and third occasion? It would. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yes.
Is that it? Yeah. So then it's over to you, Ruth.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we could take a kind of combined approach for step 1 and step 2, so that the requirement to attend the training session is actually a requirement in the first stage rather than being the second stage, because I think this would send out a stronger message that we're taking this really seriously and we're taking a stronger line, and it might bring things back before the licensing committee sooner rather than later.
Yeah, on the first failure, it could be something we want to try and advise them, say this is what's happened, a staff member hasn't challenged at that particular time. So it's for them to make sure that they tighten up their policies and training, etc. If it's persistent on the second one, that's where we've gone in harder and said you have to do this now because this is the second time. If you feel we need to do that on the first, I can speak to the other agencies and see if that can be done.
Thank you.
Mick, you wanted to come back in?
Yeah, please. I just wondered if we're actually agreeing to accept what Andy said, because I think if you word it somewhere along the lines of, even if the 3rd offence takes place outside a 12-month period, that offence will be reported to the licensing service and may result in you being asked to attend a licensing committee. And then that way, I think that would just cover, I think that would cover the unease that a lot of us got. And I think that might work. I don't know. Shimla, what do you think?
Yeah, I can look at rewording that section. I think removing the task group wanted a period, so it's clear that if anything happens between that particular period, and the period they looked at was 12 months, so we could either extend the period or, like you say, keep the period and have some additional wording about anything that happens afterwards within a particular time. We can look to do that.
Just a comment on Ruth's suggestion. I think it'll have knock-on effects if we take this out, because my understanding is this is like a mirror image of the alcohol one, so it means that we'd have to change other policies as well, because to keep consistency, I don't know why we'd force everyone to go through the training on the first one if we don't do it on alcohol and everything else. So I'm just raising that. Yes, Ruth?
Yeah, my view would be to change it on the others too, to make it a stronger message all around.
So we've got I presume we take a vote on that and whether that people want to do that, or anybody got anything that they want to say on that suggestion? Yes, Douglas?
Well, just I wasn't sure what was proposing about whether it's making it like a good hint that they do it on the first failure. So in other words, the licensor would tell them, you should do this course, this is the course that's been identified, because otherwise the licensed premises simply won't know about the course that's being referred to here. But certainly the second one, as is, there should certainly be a requirement to make sure it has been done, and presumably the licensing service would want to see the relevant paperwork to ensure that's been done. But there's no mention of it at the moment at the first step, is there? And that could surely be put in. I mean, probably a question for Shimla about the practicalities of that. There wouldn't be any difficulty with that, would there?
No,
It does say that they would be offered a session, the first step. A safeguarding and gambling awareness session will also be offered. I think we couldn't say strongly advised to take. We could say something along those lines, because otherwise we're making it a two-step process instead of a three-step process. We don't know this because this is a new process. I was just wondering about, we don't know the impacts of it and what's going to happen yet, do we? We don't know how many cases we're going to get, how many people respond to the first stage 1 and 2. Everybody might respond positively to step 1, so I presume we need to put it in and then see what the outcome is.
So it might be something for Shimla to take away and ask that question of the other people involved in it, because we all know that the right training at the right time can really make a difference to the way that you run your premises, as opposed to confusing things by having lots of different bits of less effective guidance or the wrong understandings being built in at the wrong stage. So if we've got an identified set of training, which Shimla has, if there's premises that are in some doubt and they're showing that by allowing children to gamble, then we want to be sure that they're doing that training. So anything that can be done to build that in would be good. It does lead into my second question. Can I ask about process here, Chair?
Yeah.
I'm just asking what Shimla wants us as a committee to decide, because I think the report says that we're just asked to note this. So I take it we're not being asked to approve or disapprove this strategy. And so I want to know what the decision-making process is for this. Has this already been approved by some other decision-making process in the council, or is it to be approved, or what really?
This is a multi-agency approach, so there's other departments, etc., that have to agree a process. So at the moment, this is just a process because we haven't implemented anything yet. But the gambling policy is up for review next year. So this will be part of the policy document. So you can approve it next year when we're doing the full review. So it has to go through all the process.
Okay, I mean, that's fine. I wouldn't want to leave this until next year, because it seems to me that there's basically some good piece of work done there. But presumably this has to be signed off by some process in the council, otherwise it's just officers making it up as they go along and it not being approved by any democratic system. It would be nice to get it signed off by someone. So if it's not this committee that's asked to approve it, could we have some response on whether it could be approved by the relevant cabinet member or whatever? I mean, in other words, who's going to sign off the strategy?
I would say the licensing committee.
Right.
So we can agree this here. I will have to speak to the other agencies about the change in the first failure about offering the gambling awareness session to making it stronger that they need to be doing it, and then the 12th and the rewording of the third failure.
So we're saying it's going to come back to this committee once you've got that further information, and then we will approve it with the rewording.
I can do, yes.
Yeah, I think that would be wise. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, good.
Sorry, Cliff. Yes, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to say, when that is done, it'll be able to run for what period until if it's found deficient in some way, How long will it need to run before we can review it? That would be helpful to know.
Yeah, so we're supposed to be having a meeting with the task group about when we will be doing the test purchasing. So we need to find out what happens when we get the information back, and is it working? Do we need to change anything? Like I said, this will form part of the gambling policy document, which is up for review next year. So we can look at reviewing it at that point anyway, which will come to the licensing committee.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Which
Joe,
depends
did
on
you?
the restrictions at the moment with the premises as well.
Yeah.
Joe, did you have something?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm now I'm clear that we're kind of noting the strategy today. Strategy is going to happen, but we're asking for changes to come back to us, because we've also said we'd like a lower threshold for referral to the committee, and I'm not clear quite how clear we've been in what we want to come back to us in terms of changes. I would be quite happy to give the officers a bit of discretion in referring cases that aren't strictly within 3 months, based on severity. And I'd be quite happy to give the officers discretion to require attendance at the course sooner rather than later in the process. But I don't know. I mean, I think as things stand at the moment, I don't know, maybe members don't agree with me. As things stand at the moment, we've asked for some quite vague things to come back to us. So I thought we ought to just try to pin it down a bit more.
Okay, thank you. Andy?
Okay, I just wanted to be clear, because you talked originally about having a vote on what Ruth proposed. Are we actually asking that in the first stage? Because personally, I'm not happy with that. I believe everybody deserves a chance. If there's been a mistake and somebody can rectify it, I think they should have the opportunity to do that. Without us saying you will attend an awareness course, you will do as you're told. It sounds very draconian to me. I'm happy with the way that it's set out, but as I said, a bit more firmed up with point 3. So I'm still not sure whether we're asking Shimla to change point 1 or not. Thank you.
Okay, lots of hands gone up now. Can I just start with John in case he's going to give us some clarification?
Well, yeah, my understanding is simply amend the paragraph 5.1 by strongly advised to give consideration rather than just will be offered. Is that everyone else's understanding?
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we still have a 3 strikes for a better term. Sorry, I know that's not in there, but. Does that answer your question, Josie and Douglas? Or Douglas, do you still got something to say?
Well, not quite. I was just going to say, I think Andy's possibly missed the point there, because fundamentally, allowing children to gamble in premises will be already in breach of the licence, and the premises should know. They should know about the condition. They should understand their licence, and they should be making sure that they operate within their licence conditions for a start. So it's not simply 1 strike and they're out. Yeah, they will know about this.
Yeah,
it's just that to date they haven't faced any penalty.
We always work within licensing that we give them an opportunity to rectify anything when it comes to light and put it right. It's when they start not working with the system and with us to do those corrections that we start taking action. So, but Josie, did you want to come in as well?
No, just to clarify, I thought stage 1 was strongly recommend that they take the course. Stage 2 was insist on taking the course, and stage 3 they come to committee, and then it's our responsibility to deal with them as we see fit within the options that were offered.
Thank you. Is everyone happy with that? No, right. Thank you. So you're going to bring it back to us when you've spoke to partners that's involved in this, Shimla?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So everybody happy, and we're going to move on to item 7, which I think is over to you, Claire, for the Licensing Act.
It is, if I can unmute myself. Thank you, Chair. So the report today seeks approval on the draft revised statement of licensing policy under the Licensing Act 2003. As you're aware, Jane was supposed to be presenting this item, but unfortunately isn't able to today. So if you do have any questions, I'll apologise in advance if I can't answer them. I'll try my best. It's not a project I've been working on. So the background is that the 2003 Act states that each licensing authority must determine and publish a policy every 5 years. The current policy was published in January 2016, so this one must be published by January 2021. The policy, which is one that you use quite a lot in subcommittee, deals with the sale of alcohol, the supply of alcohol by or on behalf of a club, provision of regulated entertainment, and provision of late night refreshment. It covers all types of applications that can be made under the Act. The document guides you as members of the subcommittee when determining applications and assists us as officers in administering and enforcing the Licensing Act systems in accordance with the promotion of the 4 core licensing objectives. It also provides developers looking to come to Sheffield, new businesses, current licensees, and any residents affected by licensed premises in Sheffield with a reference document to assist them in understanding the Act and how applications are dealt with by our authority. The document's designed to give clear and concise guidance to anyone who needs to use it. It is, we hope, easy to read and interpret and provides the necessary guidance to allow structured and evidence-based decision-making for officers and councillors. The structure and content of the document positively assists Sheffield City Council to deliver and achieve its aims and visions for the city as a whole. It links to other strategies and initiatives and allows for the licensing tech sector to contribute fairly and productively to the city's economy while supporting those who choose to enjoy, live, work and study in Sheffield. We began this process by consulting all responsible authorities under the Act and any relevant internal partners in order to ensure the consultation draft was as comprehensive and up to date as possible. Once that was done, a formal 12-week consultation was carried out, and that took place between the 20th of April and the 13th of July this year. At 6.3 in the report, I'm sorry, I've noticed that there is a discrepancy in the numbers, but on your report it should read 6.3. The report details who the legislation states we must consult before determining the policy. We sent out over 5,000 consultation emails and letters, and information was published on the licensing service website. Of those consultation emails, 31 responses were received, and an overview of the responses is attached to Appendix A of the report. I believe full copies of all responses have been emailed to you, but that only happened this morning, and again, apologies for that. This document draft has been presented and approved by the Business Strategy and Regulation Senior Management Team on the 10th of September and the Place Leadership Team on the 23rd of September. The draft policy for your approval today is attached to the report at page 52 of the report. So the timetable ahead, and in order for us to meet our statutory requirements, we've got to make sure that the document is approved by Cabinet in November and full council in December this year. There are no financial implications arising from the report, as the work on the revision has been undertaken within the current resources of the licensing service. So the recommendations are that members of the licensing committee approve the revised statement of licensing policy with any amendments they feel necessary and refer the matter to full council for approval. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Anyone got any questions, anything that you want to ask? Yes, Joe?
Thanks. I just wanted some clarification on the subject of the nuisance arising from vaping. I appreciate what's in the report and how it's responded to the comments by one of the commentators. But when you talk of treating smoking and vaping in the same way, does this mean that applicants are encouraged not to allow vaping on the premises? Because it would be my view, I mean, other members will probably disagree, it would be my view that vaping should generally be allowed on the premises of licensed premises, and therefore vapers don't have to stand outside in the shelter and breathe in secondhand smoke at detriment to their health and causing noise at detriment to the neighbours. So, but just what's the intention of the policy here?
Vaping isn't my area of expertise, unfortunately. There is a comment on page 49 of the report, where that question's been asked, it stating it's misleading as it suggests that vaping is illegal inside the premises. I don't think we're saying that premises have to stop it.
Yes, no, I saw that comment, and I recognise that the subsequent report has been modified in light of that comment, that it no longer says that it no longer implies that vaping is illegal on the premises.
Yeah.
But again, it's my view that vaping is clearly safer and less of a nuisance than smoking. Although how much, we can all argue about how much less. And so it seems to me unreasonable to treat it in the same way in principle, when it is a less dangerous and less of a nuisance thing. And I'm concerned that applicants might be pushed into taking too hard a line on vaping, and thus not. I mean, to my mind, there should be a difference in how these things are regulated. That smoking is always discouraged more than vaping is, and when I see them, whenever I see them treated equally, that rings alarm bells for me.
Okay, so Councillor Atton, the paragraph that you're referring to is on page 71. So for any members that aren't sure where it is, it says vaping has become common practice as an effective tobacco harm reduction tool placement in recent years, and although it is not unlawful to vape indoors, this activity will be treated in the same way as smoking is in line with the smoke-free legislation. So you're suggesting we perhaps put something or take that out altogether, or?
Well, I was hoping for a clarification on what it implies, but because it's not clear to me what it means. Maybe it's fine.
I think it's suggesting that vaping should be treated in the same way as smoking.
Yeah.
But if that's not,
it's certainly not my view. No.
What about other members?
Yes, I'll let the other members come in.
Yeah, great.
Right. I've got some people that want to speak. Is it on this, Mick and Jim, or are your items on something different? Right, so I'll come back to you, Jim.
No,
Mick?
it's on this.
Right.
I mean, you can't have, if, for example, you can't smoke on a bus and you can't vape on a bus. Similarly, on a train. So I would not support a situation where we're at odds with large sections of society where you can't. Smoking is treated exactly the same as vaping. Vaping is treated exactly the same as smoking. One of the reasons I'm against the idea of allowing vaping in an enclosed area is because it's largely an unstudied long-term. Nobody really knows what the long-term effect of vaping is. Clearly, it's not as dangerous as smoking because a lot of the toxic byproducts of smoking aren't there. But what vaping does do is actually prolong an addiction, because when someone vapes, they are actually still having a large nicotine intake. And so if anybody thinks that vaping is harmless, it isn't. It actually does not solve the problem of being addicted to nicotine. And finally, I am aware of a significant number of children taking up vaping because they think it's okay to do that because it's safe. They don't realize that it's an unexplored or uncharted area, and they're actually addicting themselves to something that is really, and so from someone who smoked for 50 years and only gave up in this March, I know how difficult it is to get off cigarettes.
Thanks, Mick.
Sorry, Karen.
I was going to say there's a few more want to come in. Do you want to answer that, Claire? Or
I was just going to say that this draft of the policy has been through our colleagues in Health Protection Service, and obviously they would have reviewed that paragraph. So I'm assuming that that is the advice that they would give as a Health Protection Service. It's also gone through colleagues in Public Health. So although I haven't got the comments in front of me, like I said, I'm a bit on the back foot for this meeting. I'd assume that comments were made on this paragraph, and that's why it's been put in place from consultation comments with our colleagues.
Okay, I've just got another couple of people. Vicky, you wanted to say something. I've got you, Douglas.
At this point, do we know how many of the vaping things contain nicotine? I know you can get fruit flavoured ones and all this, that and the other, but I don't know how many of the vapes actually contain nicotine. And I've got to agree with Mick. I see school children walking up the road vaping all the time because they think it's safe. And as somebody who has had lung cancer and a third of a lung removed, and I've still got a couple of tumours, I absolutely object to it wholeheartedly. It should be banned altogether in public places. Sorry, I went on my soapbox there, but
no problem. Douglas and then Andy. Sorry, I didn't write it down.
No, thanks, Chair. I think Councillor Orton makes a fair point. I actually don't know whether I agree with him or not, but I think it does show that we need some careful thought on this. In terms of this specific point, I think actually this committee does need to have some proper advice from the relevant people in the council who actually know about the public health aspects to this. And we had someone who specifically doing the stop smoking stuff and addressing vaping in some detail. And I think we need to go more than just saying they could have responded to the consultation if they want to, and say, actually, we do need to do this because this is something that we get right, as someone's pointed out. It's a bit of an unknown. As Vicky said, we're looking at really serious harms potentially. We don't know, but really serious harms potentially. And it's an equalities issue. So it's kind of thing that ought to be important. And we ought to, given we have got people who do know about this stuff, we really need to know that. So I think that's one of the areas that needs more work on it. But just more generally, I think what we can't see in this is the thing I asked for in the email, I think I circulated to everyone, saying we really need to see what's proposed as a change, so a departure from our current policy. And I think there's so many bits of this whole policy that change. It's really hard to see what's being proposed now that's different to what's our current policy, and what's the reason for each of those changes. I mean, there might be some that are just tidying up, but some are quite fundamental, and that's really the decision this committee is being asked to make. So I just wonder if we can take that approach and ask for take this as a draft, tabled today, and come back, and hopefully we'll be able to be provided with all the other information that's relevant to this, which I've asked for. And I think Claire, did you say that someone's emailed something around this morning? I've been in meetings this morning, so I haven't seen it.
No, that's fine.
Quite a bit of stuff for us to digest.
Yeah.
So no problem. Thanks for covering for this, by the way, Claire. And we've all heard about Jane, so a bit of a worry for her. But absolutely, I just want to throw that in. Yeah.
No, that's a valid point, and I can completely see where you're coming from. We did try to get the amended version over to you, but we were unable to locate it. I have got an EIA over to you, and I've got the full comments to you, but obviously you've not had time to digest them, like you say. No. So I completely agree with your point.
Yeah, I agreed with about the track changes. With a document as big as this, my only thing then is that all everybody's going to read is the track changes and not read the document as a whole, and make sure. So it was a bit of both, really, to make sure that we don't take the easy route and just read what's changed without reading the whole document. So that's the only caution. Andy, you want to come in?
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to agree with Mick. I agree with that paragraph as it states. I personally am not happy with vaping. As was pointed out, I think, by Vicky, young children are taking this up supposedly as an option to smoking, but it means that they become addicted. And there's even cases of parents buying these things for their children in the hope that they won't smoke, which creates the opposite. And on a personal level, not as bad as Vic is, but I am asthmatic, and I can assure you that when anybody walks past me who is vaping, I cough more than I do when somebody is smoking. So I would strongly object to the fact of people, I can see Bob agreeing, I strongly object to the fact that people could do it in an enclosed space and me have to breathe it in. If they want to vape, that's up to them, but they shouldn't be doing it in front of other people any more than they should be smoking. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Andy. Ruth?
Yeah, just adding to a request for the next stage or the next draft, it would also be useful to know which are the areas of stress in the city which are mentioned, and if these could be specifically described and pinpointed. I think these were shown on a previous version, but they're not on this one, and it'd be really helpful to see where they are. Thank you.
Bob?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to express total agreement with Councillors Rooney, Priestley and Bainbridge on their points. And I'd like to add a further reason why I think that even as a self-standing item, vaping should be subject to licence conditions and not allowed in gambling premises licensed by ourselves. That is that in recent conversation with the manager of a major city centre casino, he pointed out to me the difficulties he had in requesting his clients did not act in an antisocial manner and vape in the enclosed premises, and particularly in the premises which contain sections of a public restaurant. But he pointed out to me that he was helpless under the licensing conditions to actually insist that his clients did not vape because it is not currently covered under the licensing conditions. Smoking, they accept, it's illegal, he can lose his license as a result of not conforming, but vaping at the moment is not a requirement of the licensing conditions. He made a plea to me that if I could do anything about it, it should be in its own self-standing right. Vaping should be specified as an unacceptable activity in gambling premises.
Thank you. Anyone else got any questions on this? Yes, Cliff?
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to agree with where is he now? Mick. Yeah, I think life's really quite complicated for many people these days, and different rules applying to different situations. And I think to have an alignment of if vaping is banned on public transport, it should be banned elsewhere. It just gets too complicated for people to follow the rules. That's all.
Thank you. Jim, thanks for being so patient as well. I know you put your hand up right at the beginning and we got onto this and then you've just coming back in.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Karen. I just really wanted to go back to Ruth's point about the cumulative impact areas, the CIAs. There is a section in the appendices, and it's also was response number 20 about the, you know, in terms of whether they would be contained within the documentation or not. I appreciate that you're not saying it's not within the remit of this, but there is not enough evidence currently to justify any of them. But we've got areas near in stress, isn't it? That's it, isn't it? That's a description. I suppose two questions from that is, firstly, how will we be monitoring within this those areas that are near in stress, at what point they tip into a CIA category, and how that is actually done. And I'm unclear about that. Maybe that's my ignorance, but it seems to me that we do need to keep a close track of that in terms of just how quickly. I mean, it's particularly whether you've got streets with rapid turnover of premises that you could very quickly end up with that situation. And secondly, it's just to get a sense of how that is used in the connection of the particular COVID related regulations at the moment, but recognizing that some of those regulations will continue. And I've got, in terms of the impact, particularly about the pavement drinking and about, you know, outside tables, etc. And that seems to be putting a kind of different complexion on at what point an area of the CIA, because I'm all in favour of external drinking, external anything really at the moment, but I do realise that that's very different from having a row of bars where most people drink inside as opposed to drink on the pavement, and I'm not sure how that's been taken into account at the moment. Thanks.
Okay, the first question about when does a CIA come into effect, or what's the tipping point? The tipping point really is to look at the areas of stress. So there were areas of stress. We were getting significant reports of stress around the Division Street area, and a large piece of work was carried out, I think it was last year, to try and gather evidence regarding that. However, when we actually looked into it, we weren't able to get any kind of tangible evidence. Now, I didn't carry out that project, it was my colleague. So if you want further information on that, I could perhaps come another day and give you a full briefing on that. But there was, as I understand it, there wasn't significant evidence to show that a CIA should come into effect. And then the second part was about the COVID, the current COVID procedures. I mean, obviously they're in place as a short-term measure to assist businesses with outside areas, and I'd assume will be visited and revisited soon if they are to show any cause of public nuisance. But that's something that's been set by government.
Are you wanting to come back, Jim? Or are you?
Right. Yeah, thanks for that, Claire. But I suppose the two things is it's the process. I mean, certainly Division Street was an interesting example, but if I can use another example, which is my neck of the woods in terms of London Abbeydale Road, where you've got very quick turnover at the moment, and almost like you could have, you know, 3 properties in a row could very quickly kind of develop as bar proposals, and it's in terms of the kind of vacancies that you've got there at the moment. So it's an issue about how quickly we can respond to things like that. And linked to that is the longer term implications, because although COVID regulations may go, I suspect that outside dining and drinking and cafes, weather permitting, will be with us a lot more in the future. And I think that introduces a different dimension. So it's how we take account of that.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Douglas, did you have your hand up?
Thank you. Just on the areas of stress, I mean, I hadn't realised before now that they've actually been deleted from the policy. So I don't know if there's any particular reason you know of, Claire, that that's been done. You may not, because I appreciate it's you not be working on this.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Tell me if there's anything that you know before I go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say some of them were deleted because they were no longer an issue to us. So we did have when we wrote the policy in 2016, we had a large issue with takeaways in Broom Hill, which is no longer an issue to us. Enforcement action was taken. Education was given to the licensees, and it was no longer an issue to us. So it was felt probably best to remove that from the policy. So yeah, just general areas of stress. We haven't really seen as many complaints in one area particularly.
Okay. I mean, that's actually quite important. Is it the case that all the areas of stress are no longer considered to be areas of stress? or is it just that some of them have been removed?
As far as I'm aware, all of them were removed, but I'd have to check on that.
I think if I remember, I was just going to say, if I remember rightly, Douglas, I remember reading it, and I know there was a paragraph that mentioned about 3 areas across Sheffield, and it got taken out because things change, don't they? So there might be in now and it might be a stress area, but in 2 years' time it might not be, and it's in the policy for 5 years. And things change and stress areas change, and we can't keep changing the policy. So I think the agreement was to remove the naming of areas because it didn't feel fair that when things are moving, especially now with COVID and everything else is so fluid.
Well, I think there is a problem with that. Certainly if we haven't been informed, this is the sort of thing that we need to look at very carefully as a committee. If we're saying that either there aren't areas of stress or that there are areas of stress, but they're going to be defined in a different way, possibly by reference to some other document, but there needs to be some mechanism, because obviously as a concept it is quite important because it's actually been written into the policy again here using some different words. So I think this is what we need to know when the policy comes back to us. I mean, are we seriously saying that all the issues up around West Street and Division Street are simply not an issue of concern anymore? It's not an area nearing stress? Because, I mean, I suspect we're probably not saying that when we think about it, and it certainly isn't what other services and other residents tend to think. Now, saying this, obviously that is in my ward, but it's quite an important issue because I think that is where the limits of the effectiveness of the licensing function really get tested out to see whether they can control antisocial behaviour, the begging, the drug dealing, the impact on the police, or not. And it has been an issue that's been caused a bit of tension in the past, but I think we need to deal with this. We can't just pretend it doesn't happen.
Right, thank you. Cliff, did you want to come in?
It wasn't actually on this point.
Right.
Does anybody else want to talk on that point before I divert to something else?
No. Right, has anybody else got any comments about what Douglas has raised? Bob, is that you? I can just see a finger.
Sorry, Chair, perhaps I'm not big enough to occupy sufficiency of the screen. I'd just like some information on this one. I regularly express my own concern about the limited powers of the licensing body to control the number of licensed premises in any meaningful way. And there are several areas. One is in Councillor Steinke's ward, I think, on the conjunction of the road leading to Virgin Gyms and London Road, Abbeydale Road, where at the moment we have a public house, a alcohol shop at the side of it, a gin palace, a craft beer shop, and a sit inside beer house. And recently, just across the road, there are 6 contiguous premises, all selling alcohol. And this is on a major bus route serving school travel in both directions. And I had an interesting conversation with a young person, a 14-year-old, about what we expect in our society and what is reasonable. Now, I've got to admit that my thinking on this is outdatedly conditioned by my previous service on the Magistrates Licensing Committee, when we did have the power, and we exercised it meticulously, not to license more than 3 licensed premises within a circular area of inside a quarter of a mile, half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, and a mile. And we had the powers to limit the number of alcohol licensed premises within those perimeters. It seems to me that licensing in our case now is completely out of hand, completely out of control. And my question is, do we have the powers to limit the number of licensed premises in a given area? And if not, should we have the powers to limit them? Because at the moment, it's better than a mushroom growing yard.
Thanks, Bob. Claire, are you able to, Claire, either of you?
Yeah. we aren't able to consider need. That's under the planning remit. We can only look at imposing a cumulative impact policy if there are areas of serious problems, so crime and disorder. And I'm aware of the area that you're referring to, but it's not an area that causes issues with crime and disorder. I understand what you're saying about there perhaps being a lot of premises in that area, but they're not problematic premises that are causing complaints, nuisance, anything like that. So it's not something that we have sufficient evidence to be able to impose a cumulative impact policy under the legislation.
Thank you for that, Claire. That's my understanding, and I fully appreciate that. But this is really a plea at a different level.
Yeah, it's the would or should, yeah.
It's time that our society, in our case, our immediate society is the city of Sheffield, was cognizant of the fact that there are two different things here. There is preventative action, which prevents a conglomeration, an uncontrolled increase in the number of alcohol outlets being contributory to crime, disorder, antisocial behaviour. And in this context, during COVID, we've got another wonderful example that the national government has closed down all pubs at 10 o'clock, but we've provided an alternative facility that people can walk out of a pub, go to Tesco, Sainsbury's, corner shops, whatever they wish, purchase the alcohol, drink on the streets, drink in public parks, drink in public places. And there is a feeling at the moment amongst some of us that we are no longer in control, alcohol-wise, of our own destinies. It's completely out of order. We must at some stage, I think, coldly and calmly and rationally look at some means whereby we are predictive and preventative up front of creating the circumstances for antisocial behaviour, unlegal behaviour, and all the other things that Councillor Steinke will tell you he's struggling with in his particular area. The area you and I have in mind as being perhaps overdeveloped with alcohol supply is a few minutes walk from Councillor Steinke's ward, and what the contributory nature is of the A, the actual availability of alcohol, and B, the perception in the minds of young people as to what it is and should be and how that contributes towards disorderliness. We need to address at some stage before it's too late.
Thanks, Bob. Ruth?
Yeah, following on from this, I'm wondering if I can clarify with Claire Bauer. Did you say that you already had the exact criteria of what makes an area defined as an area of stress? And can we have this made available to the subcommittee to see what actually these exact criteria are that make an area named an area of stress?
It's at page 92 of the policy, but it is in the legislation and the guidance.
Page 92, thank you.
Mick?
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered, I mean, Bob described a power that the magistrates had. So I'm just wondering, does anybody know what happened to that power? Because we don't seem to have inherited it. And I don't know whether the magistrates still have it or not. And could what would an area that has an alcohol exclusion zone qualify as an area of as a cumulative impact for a cumulative impact assessment? The reason I'm asking that is that in the not too distant past, I represent an area, Woodhouse Village, that has an alcohol exclusion zone, but yet 2 licenses to sell alcohol have actually been allowed in the last 12 months in that area. Now, maybe I'm misunderstanding what the rules are, but that just to me seemed to be a bit of a contradiction.
Thanks, Mick. Claire?
Yeah, just to clarify, an alcohol exclusion zone is passed by, or was passed by you as a licensing committee. So the one in Woodhouse would have been passed by this committee. And what that does is it gives the police power to issue fixed penalty notices to anybody who's drinking alcohol in a public place and causing public nuisance or antisocial behaviour. It's not anything to do with the premises, it's to do with individuals and the way that the police deal with those individuals. That legislation changed, I think it was 2017, and the power was made wider. So rather than just dealing with antisocial behaviour and the drinking of alcohol, it started to cover things like nuisance dogs and problem parking. So I believe that that decision has now gone to a different committee, but I'm not sure.
Thanks. Right, back to you, Cliff, now, I think. Oh, yes, sorry, Mary-Claire. Sorry, Cliff.
No, so the other part of Councillor Rooney's question in relation to the powers that the Magistrates Court had, they had that power when they dealt with licensing. The Licensing Act then came in 2005, and anything that wasn't brought over now doesn't exist. So you have the powers that you have now. Need isn't something that you can look at, and nor is the radius that could have been looked at beforehand.
Thank you. Right now, Cliff.
Thank you. Yeah, this is just a little detail. It's to do with the personal licence application policy on page 81. And it's a little bit of wording which I think is somewhat unclear. If you look at point E, in order to apply for a personal licence, it lists a whole load of conditions, but point E says, does not have an unspent conviction for a relevant offence or for an offence. I think that probably needs a little bit of reworking just to make that clear. I assume what it means is you must not have an unspent conviction for a relevant offence, whether it takes place in the UK or abroad. I think that's probably what it means, but I think it probably just wants tidying up a bit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have we got any more questions? One moment, right. We need to try and bring this together. Oh, right, Douglas.
Sorry, just one brief one. So just in general sense, the thing that struck me about this draft is that although there's lots of guidance in it to help people apply to get a licence or whatever, to try and meet the criteria, it's actually quite unclear as to what the criteria are. I guess it's kind of implied in a way, but that is the problem with the policy. It's not good if it's left to be implied because everyone reads it in a different way. So it'd be good if we just have it tightened up as to actually what are the main conditions of applying for a licence in each case. It might just be a case of just being firmer about things, you know, and saying what are the expectations as opposed to the licensing committee may consider, because it doesn't tell you how likely they are to consider or under what conditions or what the factors are. Whereas if you have some criteria, you know, the licence committee will expect CCTV, then it's a black and white expectation. So I think that would be an improvement if that could be looked at right throughout, really. That's all.
Yeah, just to clarify, just so that I know that I'm understanding you correctly, that there are the policy is broken up into sections, so each application has its own section and each objective has its own section. So CCTV is covered in the crime and disorder section. So I suppose where somebody's applying for a premises licence or a club premises certificate and they need to take each of the objectives into consideration in their application, they then look at each objective section as well.
So my point is that by reading the policy, it's actually very hard to tell. It's easy enough to tell what things might be considered, but it's not easy to tell whether you as a premises holder would comply with them or not, because a lot depends on too many words like may or might or consider.
Okay.
It would be a much more helpful thing for businesses to know either they've met this condition or they can tick it off their list, rather than it's up in the air and anything might happen to the subcommittee. And conversely, it's much easier for the subcommittee to have a clear line that says, you know, this is generally not acceptable, unless an applicant can make its case for an exception to that. The muddy waters doesn't really help anyone for a policy.
Okay.
Thanks.
Right. Has anybody got any more questions before we? So it doesn't look like we're going to approve this today, if I'm right. One of the things is we need to decide about the vaping. I heard people talking about they definitely wanted it to be like on public transport or etc. One rule, whatever the rule is out there, which is you don't vape and you don't smoke inside premises. Do we want to have a vote on that? That's how it is in the policy and that's how we want it to stay. So, or Joe?
Yeah, Chair, I'm not sure that's appropriate. My understanding of the position on public transport, well, certainly until recently, it was the case that it was banned by the operators, whereas smoking is banned by the law. There may be some regulations more recent than that that have actually banned it in law as well. But it's not licensing job to anticipate what the law ought to be. If something is legal indoors, and if vaping is legal indoors and smoking isn't, it's not really the job of licensing to second guess that. It has to justify a policy based on evidence, based on licensing objectives. And you know, we had a discussion at the beginning, and I let it drop because I didn't think it was worth pursuing given the preponderance of views. But if we're going to start writing things into policy, you need to have evidence to justify that. And the evidence, in my view, on vaping is that it's much safer and much less of a nuisance than smoking, and I can go into the reasons for that if we want to drag it up again. But to start writing policy on the hoof like this, I think would be a mistake and would leave the policy open to challenge.
Okay, how do members feel? Claire, have you got an opinion or? Yeah, Josie?
I think that we need to keep it that it's one rule for both items. The whole point about having smoking out of doors isn't actually the impact on the individual that's doing it, it's the impact on other people. People are allowed to go outside and smoke like chimneys if that's what they want, and it's a free world, and if it might not be what we want to do, but if that's what they want to do, they can go outside and smoke like chimneys. That's fine. What we're responsible for is the impact on other people in enclosed spaces, and it isn't proven. We don't need to wait while something is proven to be unsafe. What we need to do is make the situation safe until it's proved to be safe in other conditions. And I think we would look contradictory if we didn't allow it on council premises, yet we allowed other members of the public to do it. And vaping isn't allowed in council premises anywhere. We don't allow people coming into our offices, our public areas or anywhere else to vape. They have to go and stand outside and away from entrances. And I think, and if you're in a hospital or any other place, then you don't allow to vape in hospitals. And I think that's your best rule to follow. If they allowed it in hospitals, then maybe we should allow it. But if hospitals don't think it's safe, I think at this current moment in time, I think we go with what hospitals say. And it's not the impact, as I say, that you're having on yourself, it's the impact you're having on people around you. And I think we just have to be mindful of that, I think.
Thank you.
Wise judge.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I mean, to me, this is about consistency. You can't have rules that say you can't vape in certain parts and then you can on others. Joe's right. It's not been proven to be dangerous, but it's not been proven to be safe either. And all I would suggest to you is that no one has the right to test on someone else whether their vapor is actually safe or not. There are people who have got really serious breathing problems. I'm one of them. Andy's another. There may be others here now who don't want to be tested, Joe, by somebody standing next to them with a vape. You know, I don't think they should be allowed to use me as a guinea pig. But I also think in terms of consistency, we don't allow people as a licensing authority to smoke in taxi cabs. So why should we allow them to smoke in licensing? And Josie made the best point. If it was okay, would everybody on the wards of Northern General would be vaping away, wouldn't they?
Thank you. Right. So, oh, sorry, Douglas. Yeah.
Well, I just want to try and make it easier for ourselves. I mean, if we're saying that there's more work to be done on this and we're expecting a further draft to come forward, then we don't need to tie ourselves down to something now. I mean, what we all agree on is that vaping is an issue. I think I agree with pretty well what everyone said here, what Councillor Rooney was saying, but we could do with that public health advice, because it's not just about whether vaping is bad for you, but about what's the best way to get the public to do that. I mean, it's a bit like prohibition. You know, prohibition of alcohol didn't work. It was tried very famously in America. You know, so it's about how do you have licensing policy to get the best health outcome for everyone, really. And that's what we don't have any evidence or any information on that so far. And hopefully we'll get that by the time this policy comes back. So we don't need to tie ourselves down now if we are going to get this back in a month or so.
Claire?
Yeah, I think that's what I'd suggest. The information may be there, it's just that I don't know where it is. It may be in your inboxes now, but nobody's had a chance to read it. So I just think we need to go away and look. I'll bring this, or Jane will bring this item back specifically with information about what our colleagues in public health and health protection have said about this issue.
Okay. So you know when that will be? Because it's got to go through by January, hasn't it, this?
Yeah, it's going to have to be within the
before
next
Christmas.
It's going to have to be within the next 4 weeks at least, yeah.
Right, okay. Right, okay then. So you'll bring it back with all the comments and information that we need.
Yeah, so the first item was vaping. Did you want me to bring anything else back? You wanted me to look at, you wanted to see a track changed version?
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah,
Please.
the track, yeah.
Yeah.
Mick, what did you?
I'm sorry if I feel as though I'm being dogmatic here, but I personally do not think that there's any reason to wait any longer before we come to a decision on vaping. None at all. And I just think we should make that decision now, personally. Other people will differ. Other people will say, well, it's committing us maybe a little bit prematurely, but I personally don't, because I think the obvious decision and the right decision to take is to not allow vaping in these institutions.
Thanks, Mick. Anyone got any strong opinions on that? Anybody wants to support Mick in what he's saying, Adam?
No.
Adam,
can we just put it to the vote?
Yeah. Douglas, are you wanting to say something?
Well, yeah. I mean, just it doesn't help bring the policy in any more quickly. I mean, I think I'm more or less in line with Mick on principle, but it doesn't bring the policy any more quickly. It doesn't benefit us, and it just means that we end up with a policy that's based on our own personal biases, however good we think those are, rather than proper evidence. We have got people in the council who actually know about this stuff. And I think I'd like to hear from them. I'd like to find our policies based on evidence and not based on gut feeling.
I think that's the argument, though. Is have they got any evidence? Is the thing. Has the research been done, and have they got any evidence that's going to help us? Which is the doubt.
Well, that's the question I'd like to have answered. Yeah, before it comes back.
Yes, Claire.
Yeah, and does it come within the licensing objectives? That's the other issue, isn't it?
Yeah, health.
Right. I think if it's going to come back in 4 weeks, we'll bring it back. We'll get it all signed off there and then, and deal with it then. Sorry, Mick, but no, I'm going to hear from you later. Ruth, are you wanting to come in?
Yes, please. I know, Claire, that you're going to bring back a document with track changes. I'd have a request. Just could we have in the next document, the next stage of the document, a clear summary of what new things and changes we're being asked to consider, so that we're clear, so that we don't have to read through all the track changes, but we've got a clear summary with the additional information should we need to refer to it. Yes, thank you.
Okay. So we're going to ask Jane to bring it back. Hopefully it'll be Jane or somebody that's had time to read it. And thank you so much, Claire, for stepping in. I know it's been difficult when you haven't had chance. And give our love to Jane and her family. And thank you to all your staff for doing that. I did forget to Shamila, I didn't properly thank her, so thank you. Can you thank her for me? I'll send her an email after this, but for all her hard work as well. So that brings it to a conclusion. We'll re-look at the policy again with the changes in a month's time. Okay, thanks everybody for your contributions. That brings us to an end.
Bye.
Thank you.
No, it's not been considered.
That's sorry, my internet's been breaking up, so I didn't hear that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it got raised by John. He mentioned it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Try and keep up, Mary Claire, will you?
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye then.
Safe journey home, everyone.
Cheers.